I'm going to call this meeting of the Public Health and Safety Standing Committee to order, September 10th. Did you have a chance to read through the minutes that Jody posted last night? I did. Any issues?
No, I did not.
I didn't either, so we'll let those go. Any updates, news from you, Mr. or Chief Schrock? School Resource Officer.
It's at a standstill right now. It's right, a letter going out as soon as I press send. I just had to first and last name. That basically says, we've approved the budget, let us know when you're ready to move forward. So it's, technically it's gonna be in their court. Yep. We had started a, part-time officer that I put on the roster who, worked with the department in the past, is post-certified, 17-year veteran of the, doing police work, very square away guy. He's hit the ground running, doing a fantastic job. Other than that, in terms of groundbreaking news, there's nothing.
Would he be the one that would be the SRO?
No, there's no definites, but he told me that he does have interest in putting in for it if it does become available. But other than that, there's no guarantees.
I mean, because we just had another school shooting.
Yes, we did. Well,
it's really hard to teach students if they're dead.
My daughter's school went on lockdown about a week ago.
What school is that?
Roberts.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I learned about it 2 days later, so.
Good plan.
I'll be addressing that here soon.
Yeah, so it was like, geez, come on, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
What are you waiting for?
Well,
I know we're not waiting, but.
No, we've done our due diligence, we've done our part, and that's all we can do. So, I mean, I can't complain about it, I'm not upset about it, it's just one of those things where, the mayor and I in the city, for that matter, have done everything that we possibly can, and.
Yeah, it's falls in their court.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah, yes. So.
And again, you would think that with another school shooting.
I can't imagine what the thought process is, why they're holding off.
I can't either.
But then again, like I said, it'll drive you crazy if you try to figure out what somebody else is thinking.
Sure, yeah, it's, you know.
Do we have any?
I really wish we could just apply for a grant on their behalf.
Yeah, I actually, that's another thing I do have.
I think it's probably money.
Chrissy and Danae navigating the Lexipol website to, get additional information about what grant writing services would cost if we did pay for them, and the grants that are available. And I also researched those as well, 2 weeks ago after our, last meeting. That was one of the first things I did.
I wonder, is there anything out there, or is there just so much?
For the state of Montana, it seemed fairly limited right now, but that's subject to change at any time. Yeah.
But there's also federal grants we would qualify for too, but
Yes.
the competition's just a lot more for
Yes.
those type of
Yep.
grants. Okay.
Yeah. And Lexipol has them all, so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can somebody give me a synonym for moving forward other than pull the trigger, because pull the trigger doesn't seem like the right choice of words.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Proceed.
Progressing.
Ready to proceed, thank you.
Wow.
Or pull the trigger.
I think you should use pull the trigger. Maybe that will,
No.
jog their,
Probably not.
their collective is like, you know.
Some people would take
I
that
wanna-
as a very poor joke.
He's
Yeah, I
I'm
writing
like,
a,
that's not.
And I want to do the best that, we want to do the best we can to maintain a professional and friendly relationship with the school, so.
Yeah,
so pull the triggers out?
Yeah.
That is out.
it is, we went with proceed, thank you, Doug.
Have you had a chance to work with Public Works on any additional stop signs or?
No, not as, yeah, based on, I've spoken with Mike about it, and we will move forward with it, but I know that as of right now, his plate is 100% full with,
Rushing before the snow flies?
well, not so much, well, that, yeah, but, like, the amount of projects that he has going on simultaneously it's a lot of work, and
Yeah.
so it will be, discussed once he is able to catch his breath.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any big giant rush Yeah, there's a couple intersections that we'd like to have.
Sure, no, and I
Yeah.
understand, yeah, we did discuss that, and
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you.
Yeah. Now, update on the grant for the curb and gutter, phase 3 stormwater, or phase 1.
Phase 1.
Did we find out whether or not we honestly got the grant for curb and gutter for phase 1?
You're talking about the road, and the answer is we do not yet have an update. We
Geez.
checked with them last week, and their response is they're busy, but everything looks good, but we're not cashing the check until we have it, so.
Wow, okay, still not there. Okay, now that we have the budget approved, were the new speed signs ordered and all of that, or is that you, or
That is mayor
is that the mayor?
and I,
Okay.
and Mike. Right?
It is, and the answer is no, we have not yet, but research is ongoing. We're getting the Cadillacs, not the Pintos. And so there's some time going into that, and we're also coordinating with the state. They've given us guidance and rules about how they need to go, so I suspect it'll take a little bit.
Before you can order them and then probably lead time.
Pintos explode. You want the good ones.
Yeah, these are ones that are permanent, right, that are,
Yeah, they're permanently mounted.
like they
We
have in
also,
Roberts?
I was over in Cook City, a few weeks ago, and, they have a bunch of portable ones as well that, I got some information, I haven't had a chance to follow up and research them further, but budget allowing, we may get 1 or 2 of those that we can move to neighborhood X or Y or Z as we get complaints. One of the common things that has happened is we frequently get complaints that stop sign is needed or neighborhood is tearing through there. And then when the police go and monitor it, perception and the data don't always align. So, but I also think there's a benefit in putting it in there so that people are aware that it is being monitored and watched, so.
A lot of times, especially if you live in a neighborhood that is heavily concentrated with vehicles and houses and stuff like that, vehicles that are doing 20 miles an hour, or 25, or even 15 for that matter, for somebody that's not certified on visual estimation of speed, it does appear that those vehicles are flying. And in some instances, they are. And I understand that. And I know our problem neighborhoods and our problem intersections. So, like I said, that's gonna be one of the things that, once Mike is able to, I don't want to say relax, but
Get a minute
kind
or
of-
two.
yeah, you know, we'll give him a minute for sure, and then, I'll discuss that with him.
Was there any follow-up on the, mine bus zipping up?
No, I
You
didn't see
didn't-
it.
you
I
didn't-
did go down there, no, it wasn't Tuesday.
When,
Not this last Tuesday, but the Tuesday before that when we discussed it.
yeah, it was still fine, huh?
I mean,
Or you just didn't see the bus at all?
us at all.
Huh.
It might be worthy of just a given that it's the same driver all the time and we know where he is for a half an hour a day, twice a day, it might be easier just to have a conversation and say, hey.
It's been noted.
We received some heads up. Will you please make it so we don't have to pull you over and give you a ticket? We appreciate it.
Make everybody late.
Yes,
I don't want to do that.
Chief, last time you said you have a portable digital reader sign.
Yes, we do.
I haven't seen that out. Are we using that yet?
We do use it right now. The batteries are currently in the process of being recharged. The unit itself it does work. It is quite outdated though for what we require. And that's why we're moving forward with our more permanent fixture signs.
What does it take to recharge the batteries?
We dropped the batteries off at, Napa, and they were gracious enough to do that for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was what, last meeting we talked about that. So when do we, about that portable sign?
Going where?
You said that you have a portable digital reader sign.
Yes, we do.
So I'm just following up. So we're at this meeting, so now we know it's a battery issue. When do we think that that could be up and running?
When we collect the batteries from Napa and get them moved, and what I need to know is what the problem area is.
With the batteries or with the speed?
No, where do we put it once we have the batteries in it? So right now, I think what I heard the chief saying is we don't have a location identified, and therefore there's not a make haste order on the sign.
I can certainly
We don't
pick
order.
one. I know that Lazy M is, and I've seen it personally, is a problem area. Word Avenue, I think that hopefully have remedied that issue with, Mr. Maples.
I think just from my point of view, in town is residents, and, I think a more pressing problem is coming in to town from people coming off of 60 miles an hour, coming down the pass. Yesterday, I was walking my dog, cars were, and I can judge, speed. I understand what you're saying, but I've worked with other police officers out radaring for hours at a time. So, even though it's 45, they're coming in much faster than that. So, I mean, an easy location, if it's a portable sign, I mean, portable sounds like it's easy to me. Put it between 308 and 19th Street. That's, 35 going to 25, and people are doing 10 miles over the speed limit to 15. That's a start. But, you know, and I do understand when it becomes 45, you know, people are coming, it's downhill from the pass. They're coming in fast. They don't realize, and those are just reminder signs. So that part of it, to find a location is super easy. It's just like we just gotta get it operational, get it out.
Yeah, it's, yeah, I normally, not normally, we always put that sign based on where people request it.
Well, takes it
Well,
as a request.
yes, well, and part of it again is, I think, part of what I hear is, we've got it, why isn't it out all the time? And of course, there's a cost associated with the battery replacement, so it goes out on request. But I think that coming into town on the south end, is a worthwhile spot. I don't even know if I'd go so far as down by the 35, but shortly after the 45, if you get people slowed down to 45 and they're aware, oh yeah, the speed limit's changing,
Right.
I would think they would go there, but, I can talk with the chief and see that, and I guess also, do we have any input from council are we more concerned about the north end up by the vet, or are we concerned about the south end coming in? Do you guys have any
Well, I think
preference?
they're both problem areas. I mean, I know that lots of warnings and tickets are given out between the hospital and, you know, by 2 Mile Bridge coming in. That's like a hot spot.
Yeah, I have
Constantly,
had people
so-
call in, near the intersection of 19th and Broadway, and I have
Yeah.
taken their request and actually
I've
gone
I've
down.
been passed before I get to the hospital.
Yeah.
Judy, I think both of them, like you say, are
Yeah,
important.
they're both really,
But if you
yeah.
visualize the area from the Grizzly Vet, going through the hospital, going through the golf course, that's
Yeah.
pretty spread out. Less homes, a lot less pedestrians. I think it's important to do it both sides.
Yeah.
But I think, on the south side, you have pedestrians, you have,
Well, the
people
boxcars,
stop at
although the
red
boxcars, yeah, the
crossing
boxcars
street, you
in
have
the summer is a
hotel.
huge thing, people crossing the street
Well,
there.
which direction has the most volume of cars?
Well, see, the thing is
Depends
right
on
now the
the year.
pass is
Yeah.
open,
Yeah,
so there's quite a bit of volume coming from that area and all the camp spots. So I would say if you put it up there at the south end for now, and then perhaps once, you know, the pass closes, then move it to the north end.
And I think
well,
there
and we'll
may
have
be
our
some-
other ones too here soon.
I think there may be some value in the south end. Well, and I hesitate to say soon because we're gonna get a hard freeze, and so if we don't get it before the hard freeze, it'll be spring. But I think there's a value on the south side because I think we have pretty good data on the north about kind of where we're gonna put it for efficiency, and we might be able to experiment on the south a little bit with
Yeah.
a couple of places, so.
Well, the north end, if we ever get that
I
roundabout, will
will,
fix
I will,
itself.
I will follow up with that. That's an executive, or, you know, that's an execution thing, which puts it on me and the chief.
Yeah,
But I think that's a good feedback. That, like I said, we generally do it into response to a specific response. They go out and look at it and say, yeah, let's put a sign out. Because of the cost of batteries right now, it's generally associated with the rally or the rodeo, or it's been kind of an event sign is what they've used it for. But I think there's some advantage. We can put it out there now, because we've heard that complaint from the south side.
Well,
Yeah.
and keep in mind, the north side, the roundabout will eventually slow people down. You can't hit the roundabout doing too fast, or you just can't make the curve.
right,
We don't
yeah,
have anything on the south end. They
to slow
come in
people down, yeah.
50, 55, they blow through the 45, they blow through the 35, they blow through the 25, and then you're at Roosevelt School, which is which is 25, and they're still doing.
Oh, no, I
30.
pull out on 19th, I try not to pull out on 19th because people are still going 35 when they hit that corner.
Yeah.
And it's too hard, there's, you know, they're going 35, so I usually go up a block or so.
Well, just want to encourage, you
yeah.
know, I'm a big, let's just get it done, let's
Yes.
just move forward, you know, not
Yeah.
talk about the same thing over and over.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, when we get our other permanent ones, that will help a lot too. You know, they'll be up for sure, hopefully, soon. After we get them, as soon as we get them, they'll be up, and
Just
that will help.
curious, what kind of timeline are you thinking, Jody, when they will be up?
That's up to the mayor.
mayor
Yeah,
deal.
no, that's-
We just
that's
authorized
enough.
getting them.
And I wanna hesitate, so I also agree with your logic of it's easier to just get things done, and hopefully that's been evident over the last year of the stuff that we are getting done and moving forward, but stuff still moves forward at the speed of government. And there's enough of them that they can't all be done this week. If we could do 300 things this week, everything would be done, it'd be great and wonderful, and we'd be twiddling our thumbs next week, new stuff would show up, but we're not sitting around with the finger up our nose counting to 3 and switching. So I wanna make sure that's there. In fact, before you leave, I'd like to talk and find out when you and I can go, maybe for a walkabout tour and visit and spend some time. You expressed some frustrations and you showed up and Jody responded, and I was kinda like, she was right on the money, but clearly you'd like to go sit around and do some talk. So if you've got some time today,
Sure.
I'd like to set up a time when we can go do that.
Okay.
I was gonna sneak out and intercept you on your morning walk but I haven't found exactly what time and which days, so.
Yeah, yeah, so, I mean, you're doing the research right now, so, is there a timeline for the boards or the sites, or is it more
We
waiting
really
till
don't.
Mike?
We started to look on it and started working with MDOT and got their guidance and got the
Okay.
budget amount. We got that approved in the budget.
Right,
But right now, we've got
Council did our
water,
job.
we've got stormwater, we've got some housing that we're looking at, we've got the Brewery Hill Trails, we've got 3 or 4 things that are deadlines that just, again, prioritizing what's the most critical deadline and what has to be done right now. As important as those are, they're not in the first 5 or 10, they're still down a little bit. So, let me rephrase it. In my judgment, as we look at what we can attack and what we can approach and what staff's on, it's not the top 5.
so,
So that's
are
me, we
we
can yell at for
thinking,
that
because
decision.
we're going to, like, have, snow soon, are you thinking this, and they're gonna have to probably dig grounds, put those there?
There's a possibility it may be spring, because if we
That's
get them
what
over
I'm
the
asking,
winter,
yeah.
then there's a hard freeze involved. So the thing that we're looking at now, again, based on going around, the first time we looked at it, the chief pulled out 2 or 3 boards. We then reached out and talked to MDOT. We then reached out and talked to the county. We got some additional guidance that said, make sure you get ones that have the ability to pull the data and collect the data, not license plates. What's the term that we're not getting, what is they called?
The state of Montana has an enhanced right to privacy through our state's constitution, and LPRs are seen
Yeah.
as pretty taboo in the state.
So we're not getting LPRs, but it will say,
I don't
go
believe
park
in-
there between 3:30 and 4:30 with your radar gun. And that was, when we put together the initial list, that was not part of the criteria that we included. So we have to go back and revisit what we've looked at and say, does it have this capability but not this capability and that? So that's where we are in the loop right now.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but it's very frustrating to listen to that, where we talked about this months ago, and then we're talking about doing the research, and then just now you're saying, well, maybe it's next spring.
We've had a budget approved for 13 days now, so we are just now at the time we can actually do something about it. We have gotten new information. Once we get them ordered, we don't know if they're gonna get them to us in a week, or if it's gonna take 3 months or 4 months. If they don't land in our pockets until November, when there's a hard freeze, then the physics say it'll be spring.
I understand that. But you haven't even made a decision on what model you want yet.
That is correct. We had identified a model and we've been told, go revisit.
Okay.
Advised.
I just want to encourage you to move forward on it. I do understand there's all kinds of things happening, but that can be built into just an ongoing excuse. I'm not saying you're doing it, but it's frustrating just to hear it and hear it and hear it. And we gotta do a lot of things. There's a lot of things that need to be done.
We do, and they can't all be done
I understand that.
simultaneously by the
I
same
understand
people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I get that that's not the ideal answer you want, but that is, the reality is they can't all be done simultaneously by the same resources. So,
Okay, so.
And, I mean, I think we're, you know, I think we are moving forward. The council has approved the budget. This is the first time in history that Red Lodge is actually going to have these traffic control devices. And I agree, the south end is a problem area, especially in the summer with the pass. You know, once the pass closes, last year it was the end of September, because Wyoming didn't want to plow their little loop. So, I mean, the summer is the problem child there, because, you know, the boxcars there, people are walking across the street right in the middle of the road, and there's a curb. You know, Cinta's dog got ran over a couple summers ago right there. They live right there, you know, because people speed. I absolutely agree with you. It's a huge problem area. But primarily, that problem area is in the summer, and our summer is about over.
but
So,
doing it
I'm
right
okay.
is more important than
I
right
guess
now.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say, is like, I really think, yeah, I want it done right. I want the best, I want the Cadillac version so we can gather the data.
Let's do it right the first time.
Yeah, so,
And if
and
that
if we
takes
need
more
to put,
research,
and if we need to get the temporary one up, as soon as we get the batteries and put it down there for September, you know, I think that the mayor would probably be
That-
amicable to that.
that sounds pretty easy, frankly.
Yeah, nice, you know, we'll at least get something there for the rest of the summer.
But I think part of it, so going back to your email, I'm properly attributing the email, right? That's
Yeah.
you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
There were several things that you called out that, from a priority standpoint, don't meet the public health and safety standard. There are some things that are, these are annoyances, or these
No, I
are things that
understand.
I would change if I were there.
I would just, I'm more concerned about moving forward
I
on the
think I did have to
digital
go back
speed
home.
reading signs, and not just kicking it down the road.
Yeah,
I understand everything you said. We don't
Yeah.
need to keep going over it.
Yeah,
Okay,
all right.
let's move on.
We can move on.
This annexing the city, is it called Red Lodge Fire District?
A Red Lodge rule. We would, so what I wanted to do, is come up with an action plan on how basically we need to be able to go to the citizens of Red Lodge and say, our general fund is not sustainable the way that it is, because we're paying, you know, 27 mills for our fire department, and the rest of the property taxes are going to it's basically our whole general fund is going to our public safety, between the police and the fire. And so it's not sustainable in that way. You know, if you wanna keep and maintain 24/7 coverage with our police department, and we're required by law to supply, fire protection within the city limits. So, we need to go to the public, we need an action plan on how we're gonna have that conversation with people, because in my opinion, we have, you know, a couple of choices. Number one, the property owners, 40% of the property owners, meaning 40% of the value of the property in the city limits of Red Lodge, could petition for the city to be annexed into Red Lodge Rural Fire Department. But we have to be very honest with people, when you do that, they are going to pay it on the property tax bill, because they're we're annexed into Red Lodge Rural. Red Lodge Rural will be charging the citizens on the property taxes, so it's
Do we
a
know
tax
how
increase.
much it is?
Well,
It would, this last year, it was about, it's the equivalent of about 21 mils. So what happens is, it's a two-part. So we have our floating mill, which is what we get struck with, and the fire district does too, as a quasi-municipal, as a quasi-governmental agency, where they build in that inflation, where regardless of what a mill calculates out to, we get 1/2 of the rate of inflation over 3 years. There are some mills that are, a mill is a mill is a mill. The school board mills are mills. So if the value of a mill goes up, they had 10, they still get 10, or if they had 20, they still get 20.
Right.
We get X number of dollars, and they say, last year that equaled 90 mills, this year it equals 70 mills. So the fire district is a combination of both. They have some that are mills, so there's a base unit, and then whatever got voted on top of that, so they have a split, but it works out to be about 21 mills last year. It was a different amount the year before and
Right.
a different amount the year
And it's always
So-
based on mills?
Yeah.
It is based on mills, because that's the only way you can send, well, it's not the only way, but it's the smart way when you send things to the voters,
But
because it
that-
has an inflationary.
That's
element
the
built into
only
it.
way that the city of Red Lodge would no longer be required to pay, you know, our entity would no longer be, our municipality would no longer be required to pay the fire department for the fire services, because we contract with them. And if the city's annexed into Red Lodge Rural Fire, they would then assess the property, every property tax owner. So it would free up $300,000 in our general fund.
But
Now,
then the
It would be,
property owners would have to pay 21 mills.
right, yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be everybody,
Additional.
yeah.
And in the
Not
past-
every person would pay 21 mills, but they would assess a total amount of.
In the past, when the conversation has taken place, the part that I was bothered by, and I think probably other council and individuals have been bothered by, is that the conversation has been presented as, we, the city, are not raising your taxes. The reality is, your taxes will be going up because you're getting an additional tax from a new entity.
It won't be a tax.
Jody, the question that I have, I heard you say, you know, there's different ways to approach it. So far, the only way that I have been able to identify, and I've reached out and I've worked with Tom, but petition is the only mechanism.
Oh, yeah,
that I
no,
see
I'm not
flying.
saying-
Or
no.
do we have the option of putting it on the ballot?
No, it's not a ballot issue. It has to be a petition from
Okay.
all, for property owners.
Not
It's not
voters.
voters, it's owners, because they're the ones that would actually have to pay it.
And the.
What I'm saying is there's different ways that we can free up our general fund. The other way is, would be to, you know, go to the people, you know, we're gonna give them two choices, basically, on how to, you know, basically save the general fund, so we're not like Miles City, where we're basically going bankrupt. And the second choice is, would you like us to put the resort tax, a change to the resort tax spending back on the ballot? Because right now, the voters have voted and said they do not want the way it's written, the resort tax cannot be used to fund, salaries for public safety. So, you know, it can't be used for public safety in that way. It can only be used for capital expenditures. So we would go and say, would you like us to put that on the ballot where the resort tax says, which is paid 70 to 75% of tourists, that we will use, we can use part of our resort tax towards public safety. We're not gonna take and pay the whole public safety budget out of resort tax, because we, you know, it's $1 million that would be spent, and we don't have that, you know, I mean, we get 1.3 million in resort tax, you know, it would only be part of it. But, I mean, those are, in my mind, the two choices that we need to talk to the public about. And I would think that, and most people would think that, let's use the resort tax.
I would think so too.
Totally agree.
Yeah, but we need to be honest with them and say, you know, these are our two choices right now, you know, because, you know,
And it's obviously too late to get it on this ballot.
yeah, no, this is next year, so that's why I say we need to actually start that, let's come up with an action plan. How do we get out, how do we talk to people so that they understand what we're saying and why we're doing this?
Well, I think that would be our first line of attack.
Yes.
Because it affects the people in Red Lodge the least.
Oh, you mean to use the resort tax?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean, but we also have to be honest, you know, like, if you are going to, if we're gonna use $300,000 out of resort tax, that's $300,000 that we might not be able to do, you know, a new gazebo over the hockey field or whatever, you know, I mean, you have to, it's a choice.
it is a choice, but I think
But-
public safety,
It's
Have to-
what's important to you, because I guess I shouldn't assume this, but with the way of the world these days, I think everyone wants 24/7 coverage.
Right,
of our police department, and we're required to pay for our fire department, which is only going up every year.
right.
So, I mean, both of those are increasing because, you know, you can't expect them to work for what they got 10 years ago, you know, and with our growing population, you know, and the amount of new builds we have and stuff, both of them, I mean, we're growing,
I think
and we
that
need more money to provide for public safety.
And I think we can justify that to the voters, to use the resort tax to
Right,
offset.
and so what I wanna do is come up, you know, let's brainstorm here, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna have some public meetings? Are we gonna have some, you know, and show the increased cost of everything? I mean, 4 years ago, we were paying the fire department $200,000, and now we're paying them $300,000. You know, and the number of meals we can assess in our general fund has gone from 97 down to 67, and we're paying the fire department 27 every year.
And I think the numbers say it.
I mean, but we need, like, action items, like, you know, what, number one?
Yeah, so
What's
from a
needed?
timing standpoint, I wanna say we should be looking at our ballot submission for the November ballot, I wanna say is
August?
April to, no, I think it's sooner than that, but it might be a little later next year because it's not an election year, not a presidential election year cycle. But it's somewhere between the April to June, July timeframe.
Yeah.
But the approach that we've talked about, and I think this here is, what we need to do is finish putting together the presentation that has the conversation, and basically, to echo what I hear Jody saying is, we present it to, we have some public discussions on it that say, because the other guidance we got when it came to the petition is that, and I've heard conflicting reports, so we don't have a response from the AG or anything, but we've heard conflicting reports about whether the city should be involved in that process at all. But I think where we can approach it is, do you guys want to pursue this, or do you want us to put it on the ballot so that it can be paid for by resort tax instead? That gives us the opportunity to pursue both of those conversations. And then if we put it on the ballot, we're basically doing it with their blessing and their permission, which greatly improves the option of it being improved.
So do you think a survey?
I mean, that could be part of
I
it.
hate the
Might
word
be the-
survey because it doesn't get us closer to the target
Because very few people take them to start with.
or the extremes.
But it would, yeah, or the extremes, but it would be interesting to see, to start with the survey, find out if the people are open to changing the resort tax to be used for fire and
Well,
police.
you have to give them, I wouldn't start with the survey, because you need to give them the conversation, you need to educate them first. Because if they say, oh, do I want a new park, or do I want my money to go to pay for police and fire?
Oh,
Without
I want-
understanding, without understanding, you know, what,
You couldn't
the other
start it?
option, that your taxes are probably gonna go up if you don't start use. I mean, to me, it's a conversation of, do you want a new park, or do you want your taxes to go up because we have to pay for public safety? I mean, it's not a new park versus salary here, it's like, no, here's your public park, but here's your tax bill going up, which do you want?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have to,
And we could lead that as we get that. So the other thing that's on the agenda for next week currently is to finalize that job description for that extra staff position. So we haven't filled that planner. We've got is it a finance person? Is it a planning person? It is, you know, for that administrative officer. And I've got a couple meetings set up next week where we're trying to finalize that job description and get it posted. Because this is one of those things that person would be able to do and do the work to get it done. But I think as we've finished putting together that story, we set some dates, and then what we do is we lead with a really good, we can get a news story quite easily on it. We just need to make sure that story is written properly, meaning openly, effectively, and relaying the
like
story
with the
to say,
newspapers
here's the decision that's gonna be made.
and, yeah,
So we need real data. I think the reason why
It's not a lack of data, it's the ability to present the data
Present the
in a
data.
way that it makes sense and in context to everything else.
But
you don't wanna get lost in the
to tell the people that their
weeds
property
and-
taxes are gonna go up, the question is if I own a $300,000 house, how much is that? I mean, look what happened with the ambulance district. Once they said, if your house is worth 200,000, your taxes will go up this. If your house is worth 400, it'll go up. That's the type of thing I'd like to see, is the numbers, because that's what people are gonna ask. Well, I'm willing to pay $100 to switch to the fire district and free up our budget for the city, but I'm not willing to pay $500. And so that's the types of numbers that I'm talking about when I'm saying data.
And I think there's an even higher level of resistance that says, you're doing it just fine right now, why is it going up at all? So with the ambulance district, one of the questions that I heard was,
Yeah,
what do we have that we're not going to have if it doesn't get approved?
Right.
yeah,
And the first time they ran it, they didn't discuss that
they did not.
at all.
No, they
And that
were
was the
afraid.
conversation that I relayed on as I followed
Yeah.
conversations with Tom. That these are the questions that people are asking that I can't explain. I can explain why it's a mill rather than a dollar amount.
No,
But this, what do we have that we're gonna lose and why is this necessary? That conversation is not.
what would happen if the mill goes up again, which blows out our budget? What does the city lose?
I don't think that it will go through as drastically of a change as what it did 2 years ago.
No, it's, the
It
market's
just-
definitely
But
stabilized.
because there were two different things that came into play. And the second part of that answer is, we would lose police force, because that's the only place we can. We would either lose front office staff or we'd lose police force. Anything that's not tied to the enterprise funds for utilities is where we would lose.
Right,
And then
And then-
your Miles City, that's 800 million over budget with,
830,000.
I'm sorry, that's in, I mean, 830,000.
830,000, but almost $1 million.
$800,000 over budget, and it is strictly police and fire. Now, they have a little bit different situation because they don't have the volunteer police force that we have. That's a
You mean
situation
volunteer
where.
fire?
Fire,
Are you
sorry.
gonna volunteer?
No,
They don't have the volunteer
No.
fire, and,
Wow.
and the unions kind of shot themselves in the foot there, and they've got to address it, so.
Well, and the difference is that, I mean, once you start cutting staff, then you have other staff that's having to work overtime. So you, and in the end,
You're
you're
not
not
saving any
necessarily
money.
yeah, you're really not.
Or you cut your 7 by 24, right?
Right, but you're still gonna have people on call during that time. I mean, if something drastic happens and you don't have 24/7 coverage, they're still gonna have to come in.
One thing that I want the
And
public
like-
to realize is that we're policing a growing population and a growing crime trend with the same staff that we had in the mid-nineties.
Absolutely, and that's what they need to understand. We need those kind of points to bring out, and we need that in our discussions to people, because they're like, well, we're a peaceful community, why would we need that?
I currently have drugs being sold in school zones, we have forensic interviews going on for children who were sexually assaulted. This is all within a matter of like a month.
No,
those
and
are the
people,
Yeah, this isn't.
people need to
not
take
1990s.
off
They
their,
don't know that,
I know, they need to take off their rose-colored glasses, and that needs to be said.
because
And like, if
That's
they,
right.
I know, but that'll be our job too. We need, as council people,
Yep.
when we're having those conversations with our constituents, we need to be able to say that. You know, they had, this many, drug arrests or, drug cases in this last
school
month.
zones,
They've
in
had,
school zones.
yeah, they've had this many, horrible cases involving children in this last month. I mean, it's,
And it's a hard line to take the accurate information, but not present it in a melodramatic way, and.
well, I talked to Erin at DSVS, because we have the DSVS Home Again store. And they had a couple people out on leave, and she's been having to be an advocate and handle those. And she said last year, they had 26 total cases, and last month, they had 26 cases.
Wow.
I know. So, I mean, there's something definitely going on. I mean, we have to have our public safety, we have to have the people out there well-trained in these things, and we have to give them, I hope the city and our citizens would give them the support of, paying them and keeping them 24/7 and on staff.
It's not uncommon right now to be handling domestic disputes or violence every day.
Yeah.
So we're beating a dead horse here, in my opinion, because we know we need this. We
Yeah.
keep saying all these examples, we know we need it. My frustration is the fact that I'm not real clear on, we've got this money, but we're not allowed to spend it. That's
Yep.
a problem for me.
It is, and that's why we have to go,
But who determines where that money is spent?
the
The
voters.
public.
Well, isn't there a committee that puts it out to the voters and say, here's your choices?
No, that's us.
It is the council that puts it on the ballot, but
So-
you have to get it right, because you get a shot at it, and then you have to sit around.
But
And I
the
said, a
point,
few years ago, the answer was no.
But what do the voters get to vote on? Is there like 5 choices?
No,
15
it
choices?
is,
one.
this group is gonna come up with, a recommendation of the ballot language. You're for allowing the budget to be used to pay, X percentage for fire, or.
Public safety.
Or public safety,
Just the public
because
safety.
the reality is, part of our public safety need is based on the fact that we are a resort town, or no, you're against allowing the resort tax to be used for that. And that's what this group puts together, but you want to be able to spell that so that it's likely to pass when it goes to the voters.
And I wouldn't even say that we're a tourist community, because you're gonna have some citizens out there like, well, I don't wanna be a tourist community, so I'm gonna say no. Like,
What is,
it's like,
what, right
no.
now, what is resort tax? You said it's by percentage?
No,
It's just not allowed for salaries of anything, with the exception of
park
a
and street.
position that is dedicated for parks and for additional snow plowing. The only salary that's allowed to be paid from resort tax.
And if we just put up public safety,
That
then
would
the
exclude
committee could-
salaries.
then the committee could
Right.
decide what that percentage is.
No, no.
I mean, the committee could decide
No.
how it's used.
No, well, the council will be, it'll
That-
be in the
That's the
budget.
budget exercise that we just completed.
Yeah.
So
okay.
what we'll do is, but now, the change, just to be clear, is even those dollars can only be spent once. So for instance, this year, we're using it to buy a vac truck. If we are spending a lot of that for police and fire, we would maybe have to have financed half of our vac truck. Or we would maybe have to look at some of the other mechanisms that are available for financing.
What I'm talking about is right now we have resort tax. Some of it is dedicated, correct?
Yep,
Okay?
Pre-spoken for?
yes,
Pre-spoken for.
yes.
The balance, is it broken down by percentage?
No,
So,
No,
so
no.
the committee decides,
Well,
No.
it is broken down by percentage in that we can take out the budget and throw it into a pie chart. But
we don't,
that's,
that doesn't determine the
that's a
budget.
year-by-year decision. It's not X percent goes here, X percent goes there.
that's what I was wondering.
It's a discussion about where are we gonna allocate it this year. So this year, we allocated it for speed signs.
So tax relief,
It's always 5%. That's a mandatory 5%, so that doesn't,
so that's what I was, so tax relief is 5%, okay? Admin and
Well-
PERS,
no, don't look at the percent. This is just how it worked out this year.
This year.
It changes every year. The only thing that stays the same is 5% of our resort tax has to go back as property tax relief. That's the
Right.
only thing that stays a percent
and we know
ever.
that 1% of the 4% is
Right, and
earmarked for,
this was just the 3%. 3% is the only thing that we
That
can
we're talking about.
yeah,
We have a say.
Okay.
right. The 1% has already been dedicated to stormwater.
Right.
We can't change that. That's a project-specific,
right.
right.
So we're talking about the 3% resort tax. And
Right.
isn't a certain amount going towards the pool, is
Yes,
that? that's
98, the pool principal and interest is 98,000. We put 150,000 every year into to sewer, and 100,000 into water.
And that's your choice? That's a
No,
choice?
that's, we've always done that for the bonding that we do for
So
water
water,
and sewer projects.
Each one's 100,000,
No, sewer's 150, I'm sorry.
and sewer's
Okay.
150.
All right.
Okay.
And then the pool, we run the pool, which this year, O&M, operations and maintenance, was 152,000. So $240,000 of our resort tax is going to pay for the pool and run the pool.
And last year, the budget was 1.2?
Yeah, and actually, we were at 1.34 is what we collected.
And does that include the 1%?
Nope,
That's a 3%.
yeah, but the 1%, we were closer to 1.8. But we can't touch that 1%, so we don't even talk about it,
Oh, good, okay.
okay? So those are the things that we actually, you know,
So water, sewer, both the pool,
Yep.
expense and the
and our parks,
operating.
operating and maintenance of our parks was 107,000.
Police cars come out of that.
Yeah, and our police cars
Every 2 years.
every 2 years.
Capital expenses of equipment and stuff.
I was just trying to figure out how much is left.
So we have $1 million basically that we typically use for different things. So we have like, and our resort tax goes up every year. We have 3 to 4, you know, it just,
So
Currently, we're sitting
so
pretty
about
flat.
half of it is already gone.
yeah, no, absolutely.
So we're talking about maybe $600,000 left.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably that we can play with. I mean, our vac truck this last year was 523,000, and that was our big capital expenditure that we did. So, you know, but even if we could take 300,000, you know, or 250,000 out of resort tax, and then as the resort tax goes up, we can possibly, you know, you'll be able to take more, and it'll still be that same percent to help fund.
So if we ask for 25% for public safety.
I don't wanna ask for a percent. I
You
just,
just wanna ask for public safety.
yes,
And
I
leave it
don't
up
wanna
to the-
tie us to that, I just,
And the city
to-
council approves your budget,
yeah,
the
we
expenditures?
we just did at our last meeting.
Jody, I think you're gonna have a higher likelihood if you put a not to exceed in there.
Do you think so? Well, if you say not to exceed 25% of resort tax collected, that's pretty good. For public safety.
And it also forces future administrations to adapt to the reality if resort tax is down a year or it goes up. That's just my 2 cents, and again, I think that's an idea for, as we have a public conversation. But now, there's another alternative that we haven't really talked about directly. So you brought up that 5%, that 5% came up. So that's what the voters passed.
Right.
So in order to have a resort tax, there must be tax relief as a portion not to be less than 5%. So what our voters passed is 5%, and then if there is a killer year and more comes in than what was budgeted for, then that extra surplus will also go to property taxes, which is what happened a few years ago,
Yeah.
which was a huge thing on staff, and everybody said, why don't you use the money to do this, or do that, rather than giving it back to us? By contrast, West Yellowstone, when they passed theirs, the voter language was, just dump it into the general fund. And so, because that means our property taxes will not go up because you have this money go there. And so that's another approach that meets the requirement. But again, it's the voters who set that.
Why does that meet the requirement?
Because their property taxes aren't going up. So they're getting property tax relief in that, and they had the legal validation of it, that by putting it in general, that precludes them from having to raise property taxes more. Now, they may still raise it, but there's not a need to raise it as much because it's all just going into one bucket, where we have 2 buckets that we have to deal with, and they each have their independent rules. The more restrictive of the rules is the property tax bucket.
Yeah, but
But I think the feel is that wouldn't fly in Red Lodge. And so the question is, can we put on that exceed, not to amount X, not to exceed X, that can be used for public safety?
Well, it certainly seems like the city's between a rock and a hard place. You started the conversation off by saying, we're going broke, we gotta have some more money. We
will eventually if we,
Okay,
yeah.
but that's how dire it is.
Mhm.
But yet we have money here that we're not allowed to touch unless the public agrees. That's wrong. We,
No,
as managers,
that's wonderful.
That's how.
I don't want to give government the money I don't want to give government the
Well-
ability to spend money at without limits and guidelines.
don't be silly. Address the problem. We're going broke.
I would say not yet, but we need to get ahead of it to make sure we don't.
We do need to be proactive.
Mhm.
So we gotta, you know, and we're going broke, but yet we're at the discretion of the public. I don't think that's good.
But like if you're
Called
gonna raise
government.
taxes, which is the other alternative
Okay.
that's been raised a dozen
Okay,
times.
but they're not gonna vote to raise
That's
their
our
own
point.
taxes.
Pardon? But again, that's the discretion, right? So the part that we have control over, from a council standpoint, is we can cut services. So we can't raise the revenues.
We have to
can't
balance
cut
our
the
budget.
services.
I
Period.
understand
Yeah,
that, and that's my
so-
frustration, we have money there that we can't touch. I'm not saying be.
Oh, no, we can touch it, we just can't use it
Well,
for whatever we want.
We can't use it for the general fund.
To prevent
Ba-
it from going in
basically,
bankruptcy.
We cannot,
Exactly.
we cannot use the resort tax for the general fund right now.
I understand that,
So,
and I'm saying that's
what-
the problem, that's where
yeah.
we're in a rock and a hard place. And that's not good,
Chair,
we need
your-
to address
your-
that as
your
a
time
big
is
problem.
set, but
Jody, can I ask one question?
Yes,
Just a general question first. Who was here when the resort tax first went in? Okay. I recall, there was a lot of discussion, pro and con, and a lot of people were very reluctant, to pass it.
and it
I
failed a
think it's a
couple
good
times.
thing. I think it's a
no,
great.
it passed, but the business owners tried to bring it back on the ballot and have it revoted on again.
But I was just gonna say that I
It was
do
like-
recall the discussion that I remember, there was a big reluctance, because they thought it was just gonna be a money grab, and it was eventually gonna go into the general fund,
Right,
and people didn't want that.
all right,
I remember when they were saying it's gonna be used for, like stormwater, for roads.
water,
And that,
sewer,
people were like, good, because
Yeah.
they said otherwise, that stuff's probably never gonna get done.
right,
But they were very reluctant to let it go into just a general fund, because.
for
then
the
it
city
gets-
just to spend.
And then,
Yeah.
and then the roads don't get done, and all
And we
the
don't
other
have
stuff.
parks, we don't
So,
have,
I was just gonna bring that up, is
Yeah,
just
oh,
a-
yeah, no, I know, and
just
that's
as a-
why,
just as a cautionary thing that,
yeah,
while there may be a great need to do just what you're saying, is we need that to do all these other things, the citizens out there liked it dedicated to where they could hope to see improvements in, big projects, and,
right, and we have done that. I mean, the number one, when we got the voters to renew it, the number one project they wanted done, besides the stormwater, was the pool. And we
Yeah.
got the pool rebuilt. And so, yes, but I think that there's room in our resort tax budget to not pay all of public safety out of the resort tax.
yes.
Because it's not just gonna go into the general fund, it's still just
Yep.
going to be,
I was just making
To-
a comment that
yeah,
I do
absolutely, and
know
that's
people
why,
And what
but
I,
that's why we
like
have to
it.
have that
I'm just
conversation with
curious,
people.
what I
there's no
heard-
bed tax?
what I
Do we
heard
have a
was,
tax on?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's a state bed tax, and then we have a T-bid,
Yeah.
which does a voluntary tax.
will you please wrap your meeting so we can do the next one?
yes.
We have 5 minutes.
Any other business?
Start that meeting up, you're 5 over.
We're not 5 over, it's 8:53.
All right, so think about, I guess, my wish is that we all think about ways that we can, our timeline for doing this, what we're gonna do to present it to the public to get them on board with us.
Is there any way to do a forecast of the city budget based on the value of a mill right now? At what point will the city not be able to cover? Is there a way to do a forecast?
Not,
A 5-year forecast, we're talking 5 years on the downtown plan, 5 years on the growth policy. What would the city budget look like in 5 years?
Yes, not done yet, overload,
Yeah.
resources.
Beep, beep, beep.
yep, okay, all right. let's
That's all
go.
you got to
That's-
say?
Yeah.
So it is.
Fine.
Well,
Is there any other discussion? That would be-
Oh, I was asking you to close down your meeting and then Sandy.
I might, yeah, it's not quiet.
I'm sorry.
We don't care. Anyway, meeting adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you so much, chief.